is what you do. Hello, hello. What's up, everybody? Oh my gosh, I can't believe people are actually here. This is so cool. My name is Chris Gillibo. This is the start of something brand new that we are going to co-create together. So it's good that people are here. I have never actually had a YouTube channel before, but in a changing world, I have to adapt as well. I'm going to talk a lot about that today and as we go forward. But just as we are getting started, to make sure this is actually working the way that I hope it works, yes, give me a little hello. Let me know where you're watching from. I see a few people already there in the chat, which is so cool. Hello to people in, hey, what's up? Luna is in London. David Hutchinson, hey man, welcome again to New Jersey. David just did a cross-country trip to relocate for his wife's job. I believe she is a nurse or working in a hospital at least. So thank you, David, for all you do and your family. Hello in Bavaria. Hello in Lisbon, Laramie, Wyoming. Amazing. Awesome. So cool. So I'm going to call this building uncertainty or building opportunity, building security. There we go. In uncertain times, finding opportunity in uncertain times. I wanted to just kind of reinvent and regroup and do something different here because this is the very definition of building the plane as it flies, which is not a good thing to do if it's an actual plane. But I think when it comes to YouTube and dialogue, I figured that's good. So I was supposed to go on a 40-city book tour. Oh, hi, everybody. I see some more folks popping up. Hey, hey, hello from India. Tucson, Arizona, and from Atlanta. Nice. Chicago is in the house. Amazing. So I was supposed to go to many of those places. Sorry, I'm not going to be in Atlanta and Chicago for a bit. But I think it was actually today. Today I was going to be in San Francisco. Tomorrow, Los Angeles. My new book comes out tomorrow. And of course, I can't do that. And so the challenge that I've taken on for myself, the commitment that I'm making publicly, is to show up. Just to show up however I can, in whatever forms I can, to be as much of a resource as I can to help people wherever they're at. And what I want to focus on specifically is helping people who are struggling financially, trying to adapt. Maybe they're out of work now, maybe they're underemployed, maybe they're just trying to, as I said, build security for themselves because the world is changing, it's turned upside down. We're all kind of like, what's happening and what do we do? How do we respond? And when I say that, I don't mean so much like, respond to the virus, the pandemic, et cetera, but everything else that's around us and how it's affecting us, because there's a lot of stuff that we can't control right now. And what I want to focus on is what we can control, what's within our influence. Awesome. Looks like a few other people are here. Thank you for showing up as well. Like I said, that's my commitment. Hello from Toledo. Hello from Florida. Austin, Texas was supposed to be there as well, but here we are and able to converse. Anyway, so the way this is going to work is you can watch live every weekday at 9 a.m. Pacific, which is right now, 12 p.m. Eastern. Other times wherever you might happen to be. And you can, if you watch live, you can post comments in the chat. We can do lots of question and answer and back and forth. But if you're watching the replay later, my goal is for much of this, especially as we go along, to be timeless. So essentially what I want to do is I want to create a resource to help people who are trying to navigate this time and place, trying to figure things out, and try to see it as a time to create possibility and such. So I think a lot of big things are going to come out of this time. I think a lot of people are going to make some tremendous shifts. And I look forward to hearing about that. I want to share a lot of opportunities with you. Here's what so-and-so is doing. Here's what they have tried. Here's a different take on something than you might hear somewhere else, essentially. So just in brief, the way it works. Hello, everybody. Hello, Cassandra from Washington, D.C. Awesome. The way it works, well, first of all, there's nothing for sale, just so in case anybody wonders. There's not like a course or a membership site. Everything that I'm going to do during this entire time of April and May is completely free. The only thing that you can actually purchase is the new book, The Money Tree, which you can see behind me. Conveniently, I happen to have a copy of it with me, another copy of it here. I like my book so much, I read it twice, The book comes out tomorrow. I'll talk more about it tomorrow as we go along. And I'll be using the book as a text a little bit throughout, pulling out some examples and such. But the book really is the only thing for sale. And I'm also happy for people to share books. I'm happy to support libraries. Really, I just want to, as I said, be a resource to help people achieve financial stability, because I know a lot of people are struggling during this time. And even if you're not struggling, even if you're not like, oh, I don't know how I'm going to pay my rent, then it still is a time that a lot of us are feeling anxious and worried and kind of, disconcerted, right? And we're all kind of, I think everybody on the planet, more or less, is kind of, at least, every adult. I don't know anybody who's not impacted one way or another. And so we're all kind of asking big questions and small questions. Like the big questions are like, should I be doing something different with my life? Like, what choices do I need to make differently, and so on. And then the small choices are just like, is there a different way that I should be making an income? Is there a way that I can make an extra income so that I have more security and I'm less dependent on other sources, especially like, as we go forward in this time and we realize that a lot of the things we have believed in, or a lot of assumptions we have held or expectations we have had, are no longer valid. It's not like everything is not true, everything's a lie, but there's a lot of stuff that is changing or has changed already. So that's that. Let me know again where you're watching from. We're going to do a question of the day. I'm going to tell you about the format here in a second. Also, if you don't mind, give me a little thumbs up there on YouTube. It kind of, on the page, of course, it shows YouTube that people actually like this. You can also subscribe to the channel, and you'll get notifications. Click the little bell whenever we do episodes. It's not going to overwhelm you with notifications. Just going to be doing one of these a day. And as I said, it's all about financial stability. I'm going to introduce myself in a second for those who don't know. And let's see if I can do something else while I'm learning how to do this, building the plane as it flies. Somebody has a question. I will come back to that in 1 second. If you have questions, pop them there, and I will go back to that from time to time as we go along. So let us see here if this works. Question of the day. This is a very simple question. We're going to start basic. It will get more detailed as we go along. But today's question of the day is pretty simple. I said that we are co-creating, and I really mean that. Like in my book tours in the past, like every night is different. Like I have a set talk that I give, but something that I have noticed is always true is that each audience, each city is kind of contributing different questions and kind of making this event special. And I think this is going to be, the same kind of principle. Like we are going to like build this out together. So my question as we get started, not just today, but with the whole series, which is going to go every weekday for the foreseeable future. Like I don't have a specific time frame for it. It's just kind of like as long as we are all in this together. So, which, maybe a little while. So question of the day, why are you here? Like what are you hoping to get out of this time? Maybe you just follow me and you wanted to see this, which is totally cool. But if there's any other reason, like if you're trying to figure something out, if you're trying to start a side hustle, if you're trying to make a transition, if you're trying to learn if you're learning to work remotely for the first time, if you're just, also curious and also thinking, what can I do? What can I do during this time? Or if you're feeling anxious or worried, or I don't mean to project anything upon you. It could be something totally different. So whatever it is, I'd be curious to know why you are here. I will tell you a little bit about why I'm here. I already kind of alluded to it myself. But the question is, why are you here? Let me know. And yes, let's see. I had a couple questions here. Thanks, James, for watching from Utah. Yes. Oh, David answered my question for me. You're awesome. There will be both Kindle and Audible versions of the new book starting tomorrow, actually. So this is April 6th. If you're watching this later, then maybe it's already available. James says, just saw your post on Twitter. That's what got me here. Awesome. I'm trying to do side hustle and make money online from home. That's cool. Feel free to share more about that if you'd like, if you have a specific idea, or if not, that's totally cool as well. Let's see what everybody else has here. David's looking for positive, valuable alternative to the news, and to get more tools and daily nudges to take action. Awesome. Yeah, that's great. Positive, valuable alternative to the news. So, on that, first of all, I acknowledge reality. Like I acknowledge, that this is a really difficult time. Like this is a time, I don't know if it's unlike any other before in history, but certainly like any time in our lives. where so many people are affected, impacted, scared, et cetera, afraid. So I don't mean to, like, as I said, deny that reality. Like that is there. At the same time, refreshing the news every 5 minutes is not really going to help us. It's just going to make us more anxious. And unless you're somebody out there like on the front lines working in healthcare, which, thank you so much to everybody who's doing that. Probably they're not watching right now because they're on the front lines saving the world. But for all the rest of us, it's like, okay, what can we do? What can we do? So I do want to provide those positive, valuable alternatives while acknowledging, what's actually happening. And then what else did David say? He said, to get more tools and daily nudges to take action. That's great. So we're definitely going to do the daily nudges. And my hope is that every day as we go along, I'm going to share a little bit of a story time with you, a little bit of practical tip as well. And then in addition to the question of the day, we're going to have a daily challenge. All right, so every day it's a little bit of a challenge, which is either think about this thing or go and do this thing or consider this thing. I'm not a big fan of telling people what to do, like what you should do. I don't know what you should do. I can just offer some suggestions, some examples from my life, as well as from the Art of Nonconformity community, the Side Hustle School community, World Domination Summit, all the wonderful people that I am fortunate to associate with and to know. Let's see a couple of other answers here. Then I'll tell you a little bit more about me and what I think this is all about. Sooner mom of seven, season mom of seven. Wow, you got a lot. Are you homeschooling? All of those kids. Seasoned remote worker as an expert VA and coach who is often called to help others navigate the virtual world of work. Well, thank you for showing up and thank you for helping people navigate that world. More and more people, as you know, are in that world. Someone says, no income as a travel guide. There's a travel guide right now. Not getting a lot of work. Quit my job, trying to build side hustle, something to work self-employed. Build an outdoor travel blog, though I'm worried about how to make a living out of it ASAP. Okay, that's something we can definitely talk about. James is teaching digital media at a technical college. Would like to start teaching classes online for my own profit. Awesome. We've had a number of stories like that on Side Hustle School, which I'm going to talk about in a moment here. So I definitely hope that can become something viable. Soraya is looking for ways to work remotely. And Luna says, so glad you mentioned this, society will change radically after the crisis. That's absolutely true. Anybody who tells you otherwise, they're either just trying to make you feel better or trying to make themselves feel better, or as I said, not acknowledging reality. But just because society will change doesn't mean it's going to change negatively. There's lots of positive impacts that are going to come as well. So society will change radically after the crisis. Luna wants to make sure she has the tools to make the most of it and not default back to life as it was. Here to learn. Well, guess what? I am too. I am here to learn. I'm here to share. I do believe in putting forward a message and an agenda and saying, like, here's what this is about and here's what I want to communicate for those who want to learn. But I'm also, like I said, learning along the way as well. So it's two things all at once. Yes, you have taught and mentored your 7 kids at home. Well done. Amazing. We need to get productivity lessons from the Sooner mom of 7. So a little bit about me in case you stumbled upon this, or if you're watching this later. I know some people are quite familiar with my life story, so I don't want to get into it. It's almost like I do a lot of podcast interviews, and pretty much 50% of the time, the first question they ask is so tell us about you. And I'm like, okay, it's not like I'm unwilling to answer that question or any other question. I just feel bad for people who have heard it over and over, and my life story doesn't change, from podcast interview to podcast interview. So I'll just be very brief and say, for those who don't know, my name is Chris Guillebeau. I am an author, traveler. At least I, used to travel, will travel again at some point. I'm an entrepreneur. I've always worked for myself. I say that I'm self-employed for life, unemployable, not really good at working for anybody else from a young age. Not because I wasn't motivated to work, but I had to. Maybe if you have ADD like I do, or you're just kind of distracted, you relate to this. If I was motivated to do something, if I was excited to do something, I would give everything I could to it. But if I wasn't, I wouldn't give very much. And so that doesn't work very well in the corporate world. Kind of had to find my own way. And now, for I guess 21 years or something, I have been doing, lots of little things, beginning with very small projects, selling things on eBay, other online auctions, just a lot of side hustling, like I talk about on this podcast that I'll mention in a moment. Never scaling a company, but always like living this lifestyle entrepreneurship value. Was an aid worker for several years in West Africa. Came back to the States, did grad school, all kinds of stuff. And then 11 years ago, I started a project called The Art of Nonconformity, which is a blog, a community of awesome people. Wrote my first book out of that experience, went on a book tour to all 50 states and every province in Canada. Unconventional book tour, very small in lots of places and sometimes larger, and got to know people who were doing really interesting things. And so from out of that came a lot of other stuff later. I wrote a book called The $100 Startup. I wrote, a number of other books. I had this quest to go to every country in the world that I wrote about and chronicled in the blog. And then about 3 years ago, I started a podcast called Side Hustle School. Osariah says, interesting, I think I'm undiagnosed ADD. Well, you should check that out because I was diagnosed as a kid and I didn't do anything about it for a long time. And then I guess it was about 5 years ago that I started trying to learn more about it as an adult, and it's helped me a lot since then. Let's see if I can make a little change here. So we did the question of the day. If there's anybody else who wants to share why they're here, feel free. You don't have to. I'm happy for people to engage passively or actively, whatever is good for you. Wanted to mention, so Side Hustle School. 3 years ago, I started this podcast, Side Hustle School. It's a daily podcast, 7 days a week, short episodes of 10 minutes or less usually. And for the first 3 years, literally every day, 365 days a year, I shared a different story of somebody out there, somebody like you perhaps, who found a way to create some extra income, to create a real asset for themselves. So I say extra income, but it's really about an asset because this is not about I'm going to go drive for Uber or I'm going to, get a part-time job or whatever else. Truly creating an asset for themselves to provide more security and decrease their dependence on any other source of income, even if they had a job, even if they love their job, et cetera. So I'm still doing the show. I'm in year 4 now, which is amazing. I didn't imagine that I would go beyond year 1. I wasn't even sure I could actually, find enough stories for year 1. That was part of the challenge. It was also like building the plane as it flies. But I did. More stories kept coming in. And then at a certain point, a lot of people who were listening to the podcast started, to build a project of their own. And so for the last 2 years, probably about 25, 30% at least of the stories we featured are people who are like, hey, I was listening, to the podcast. I got this idea. I went out and started this project. So it's a really great, community of, case studies and look what is possible and look how to do it. So that's Side Hustle School. Art of Nonconformity has transformed my way of seeing the world. Amazing. That's great. Thank you. Oh, I saw some other comments here. I missed them. Sorry about that. Jerry Morse is retiring in 3 weeks. Good timing. Need side income. Yes, it is interesting timing, right? It's an interesting time for any kind of major change like that. So I'll be thinking about you, Jerry, and I hope you will continue to join in so we can talk about some different opportunities and such. So that's a little bit about me. I don't want to go on too much about that because I really want to focus on you. Whenever there's a website, I always think, the most important page is the home page, of course. The second most important page is the about page because it is important to learn more about that person. If you have a website, I think it's, you need to really invest some time in that about page because people who don't know you actually do want to know more about you. They want to see a picture of you. They want to know something personal about you. I think this is something that people kind of underestimate, especially when it's any kind of personality-based project. However, it's also really good to understand with any income-generating project or creative project that you start about the other person, who is it for, right? This is about you, but what is it about that person who's watching or listening or reading or engaging or buying a product or hiring you to do a consultation or a coaching session or whatever. So for me, as I think about what are we doing here? This is for anybody who's trying to find their way out of a difficult situation, especially as it relates to money and work. Or whether you're in a difficult situation or not, you are thinking ahead and you want to be proactive because you recognize clearly, the world is changing, the world is shifting, and we need to do something for ourselves, which I will also talk about a little bit. So going forward, in each episode starting tomorrow, I'm going to have a detailed story. telling you a little bit about at least one person who's done this. I might cross-reference some of the stuff that's on Side Hustle School, which you can listen to, by the way, wherever you listen to podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Castbox, radio.com, etc., or directly on sidehustleschool.com. That is also completely free. And as I mentioned, I'm going to have a tip, a daily tip and a challenge. So, and then I meant to mention as well, like we're going to talk about opportunities, like what are the opportunities, how to spot them. So not just like, here's something you can go and do, which I will give you some of that, but more importantly, how can you learn to spot these opportunities for yourself, which is a much more valuable skill, right? Because if somebody gives you a list of things, you can go and follow that list, but in an ever-changing world, that list is going to change and update over time. So much more important to learn for yourself, like how can I write my own list? How can I learn to spot different opportunities so that I can create something for myself? All right, so I mentioned that there's going to be a daily challenge. And we're, just like the question of the day, we're starting kind of simple. Come back tomorrow and every day beyond, and we will get a little bit more in depth. But I wasn't sure if anybody would actually be watching, and I can't believe that so many of you actually are. So the daily challenge today is, what is your goal? And I don't just mean like watching this series. This is big picture. What is your goal? As the world is turned upside down, as we are all in isolation, socially distancing, and your work has probably changed, at least in some way, maybe in a major way. Your home life has probably changed, most likely in a major way, but at least in some way. So when we come out of this time, when we look back at the end, what do we want to have accomplished, and what do we want to be able to say, okay, that time was, a crazy time, and we'll always remember it. Every person in history, at least of a certain age, is going to remember, COVID-19, the COVID-19 era. So what do you want to see, for what is within your control? What do you want to say? Okay, that happened. That was that crazy thing. But also during that time, I started a new project. I started that side hustle I've been thinking about for a long time. Brad just said, like, my event-based nonprofit just launched. Now what? This is an interesting time. So your event-based nonprofit may need to shift in some way, just like I talked to someone who was in the cruise industry, and I was like, you may have to shift in some way. But maybe Brad's answer, not to put, words, in his mouth, but maybe his answer is like, at the end of this time, I want to say, I launched my nonprofit during a pretty, scary time, and wasn't sure quite what was going to happen. And I had to make some changes, in response to like this new world order, but I was able to figure that out. And I did make some changes, and, I'm better off now than I was before. I think that is my goal. I think that is a good goal for everybody to have, is like, at the end of all of this stuff, like, we will get through it. It's hard. Let's face reality, as I said, but we will get through it. How can I be better off before, how can I be better off at the end of this than I was at the beginning as I entered it? So if anybody else has an answer to that, feel free to share. If not, it's okay. You can have a private answer. I just want you to think about this, as you go throughout your day, throughout your week, and as you're making decisions. Even as you're like going to the grocery store once every 2 weeks, or whatever you're doing, or whatever the situation is like where you are. Maybe you're in a place where it's not quite so bad, but no doubt, things are different. And so where do you want to be when we, close this out, or when we kind of close the chapter and look back and say, what was that like? Okay. So also with Side Hustle School, I make it to kind of shine a spotlight on lots of people, and I want to do that here as well. So as I said, we are co-creating. I've already gotten a lot of emails from people. I asked over the past couple of weeks, tell me some examples of people who are regrouping in the new economy. What are they doing? How are they navigating the process? Maybe it is somebody like Brad who's like got the nonprofit focused on events, or a business that's event focused. How are they able to like get through that? And are they just kind of fighting it, which is not usually going to be effective in a situation like this? Are they just like accepting it and feeling defeated, which I know it's a hard time. Like, we're feeling lots of, negative stuff. So if you're in that place, like, I understand. Or, perhaps are they looking at it differently, finding a third way, which I'm going to talk about a lot tomorrow with the launch of the Money Tree, and doing something different. So James says, my goal is to be financially fit, so I am never so affected by world problems like this. I think that's a wonderful goal for so many people. And Soraya says she has, the same goal. So, okay, if anybody has anything else to share, that's great. If you have any questions, that's fine. Otherwise, I'm going to begin building out the teaching for this going forward tomorrow. But let's see, I had a daily challenge, which I mentioned. There's one more thing I want to share. If you have anything else, pop it in there and I'll come back to it in a second. This is kind of the creed, or I don't know if it's like the motto. It's more like a statement of beliefs. Like I said, I believe in putting forward an agenda. I believe in sharing, here's what I believe about this thing. I'm not just like, I don't have, it's not like I lack beliefs. Like, this is something that I want to put forward. This is my manifesto per se. So for this, what we're doing here together, this is manifesto, 3 parts. With uncertainty comes opportunity. There is a lot of negative adverse effects because of what we're seeing in the world. I believe there's also going to be some positive shifts as mentioned. So where is that opportunity? Number 2, no one will care as much as you do. No one's going to care about your well-being. No one's going to look after you as much as you will. Like, even if you have a good job, it's not like every actor, every corporation is an evil corporation or a villain, but ultimately you're going to be responsible for yourself. So like James just said, and somebody else in the comments as well, your goal should be, or at least one of your goals might be, to be financially fit so you're not affected by world problems as much. And then last but not least, you can do more than you think. I really do believe that, within ourselves, especially in a time of difficulty, often we're able to pull out something that we didn't know existed before. And just like I'm building a web series on the fly, there's something that you can build too. And you may have a little bit of a vision. And as you take steps toward that vision, you're going to see that there's actually so much more to it. And that is what I have experienced time and time again in my life. Whether it's the podcast or the blog, which I started, as a little travel blog, and I had no idea that it would actually make kind of a deep personal impact with some people, which then challenged me, to get better and to go above and beyond and figure out, okay, what's next? How can we really care for this community? So the same is true for you. You can do more than you think. You might have an idea of one thing, but the only thing you need to do right now is ask, what is the next thing? What is the first step, in that process? So let's see if there's any other comments. We're going to be back again at 9 a.m. tomorrow, every weekday going forward. Like I said, I'll have a little bit more teaching in the upcoming episodes. James said, I'd like to learn more about podcasting and how to make that a viable financial stream. We can definitely talk about that for sure. I'm always happy to share. I try to be very transparent. If people have questions about my business or about publishing or podcasting or anything else that I've been able to do or have attempted and hasn't worked out, I'm happy to share about that. Yes, thanks for your input. Good. Thank you for your input. I'm so glad, DMG, that you feel that the books have been greatly helpful to me personally. Glad to hear that. That's excellent. So every weekday we're going to be back 9 a.m. Pacific. Remember to subscribe for notifications. Hit that thumbs up button. It does help me, or at least I am told that it does. You can also share this with anybody else. The new book is called The Money Tree. Going to talk about that more tomorrow. It will be available tomorrow. Wherever books are sold, which is largely online these days, but lots of places that happens. The last thing I wanted to say, just before I sign off for the first day of this new adventure that we're going to share together, or at least I hope you'll join me for it. I just want you to know that whatever struggle that you are going through, you are not defined by it. And that struggle or that anxiety or that distress that you're experiencing, it's there. It's one part of things, but there's also another part. And so I hope that you take care of yourself, look out for somebody else, and I look forward to sharing more with you as we go along. All right. So thanks so much. Have a good day, and I will be back tomorrow.